The 2010 World Cup was one of the only World Cups that I actively remember. I mean, it was inescapable for a 13-year-old in England, even one like me who cared more about subterranean Greek architecture than football. And on reflection, I kinda get why. Rarely were there so many big moments in a World Cup, and now that I'm not so actively dismissive of football, I've come to respect the good, the bad, and the downright baffling moments of the biggest football competition in the world. So, let's discuss. Obviously, this video is a little biased, as despite my best intentions, I am English, but there's so much that went on throughout the entire World Cup this year that I hope I can evolve past some English fans' manner of discussing football. That is, racial abuse and general idiocy. Seriously, if you've ever sent racial abuse to a player, fuck off this video, I don't want you here. You're an embarrassment to England and football. Are they gone? Let's go. So, where to begin? Well, the second syllable is probably the best place. Indeed, you can't play football without a ball. And for this World Cup, the geniuses at Loughborough University developed a ball unlike any other. Apparently. I mean, call me crazy, but it looks like a ball to me. But apparently this was a super special ball. It was called the Adidas Jabulani, and according to statistics, it was amazing. I mean, seriously, a rebound test of less than 6 centimeters, a 0% water absorption weight increase. If I had any idea what half of this shit meant, I'd probably be impressed. But I'll tell you who wasn't impressed. Basically anybody who had to actually play with it. Italian keeper Gianluigi Buffon said, "It is very sad that a competition so important as the World Championship will be played with such an inadequate ball, presumably while enjoying some delicious Hawaiian pizza." English keeper David James said the ball was, quote, "dreadful and horrible," and he was the keeper who could actually stop the ball, but more on that later.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
When Frank Lampard was asked what he thought about the ball, he had this to say.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it very much. I think it's a very good looking ball, first of all. I love the design. As we've said before, the African colour's very apt, with the World Cup being there for the first time in Africa, South Africa, so I think it's a very good looking ball for starters. I think actually for hitting a few shots and just passing with it, I think it's very, very strong ball, feels very good, it's very true to hit, and I like the texture to the outside.
Yeah, hardly a ringing endorsement. Lampard would go on to have a really bad showing at the World Cup, scoring a whopping 0 goals out of 40 shots between this World Cup and the previous one in 2006. Although one of those should probably be counted, we'll get to that later too, don't worry. It's safe to say his performance wasn't great. If only they'd made the ball prettier. One thing that most people had to concede was that the music for the 2010 World Cup was great. Waving Flag is an absolute tune. Shakira's song is probably the best World Cup song ever, even if it makes me think of Fozzie Bear every time I hear the title. 'Cause this is Africa. And the lead up to South Africa's first time hosting the World Cup led us all to expect the soulful and beautiful sounds associated with the gorgeous and wonderful continent of Africa. Instead, some guy set up a Vuvuzela stand outside all the stadiums and every time you watched footage from this particular World Cup, you'd think a swarm of hornets had descended onto the pitch for a kickabout. The players hated it, complaining that it distracted them immensely. Apparently a deafness charity in Switzerland called Hear the World deemed it harmful on a serious level, with it being louder and more damaging than a referee's whistle when both are blown right by your ear. And the weirdest bit is no one seems to know where it originated from. Some believe it's a descendant of the kudu horn, a traditional African instrument dating back to the 19th century. An African Baptist church claimed that it was actually their own creation and threatened FIFA with legal action once they realised the Vuvuzela was being used so prominently. But one thing's for certain, it made your TV sound like it was malfunctioning. Speaking of TV malfunctions...
What? It says here, there's a new ITV1 HD channel.
Is there?
It's weird to think of a world where HD was a brand new thing, really. Nowadays, every TV on the market is at least 720p, and we're even branching towards ridiculous resolutions like 8K. Who needs that much K? But in 2010, there was a big push for HD to become the standard for broadcasters, and ITV made a big point about watching all of England's games in HD on their brand new ITV HD channel.
It's like you're really there. Where? Well, you know, there.
I can't see it myself.
Me neither.
The brighter side just got brighter.
What I'm about to play for you right now is the exact footage that went out on ITV HD when England scored their first goal at the World Cup against the USA.
Both really pumped up for this one. We're halfway through a pulsating
I am
affair.
not making
The
this
Brazilians
up.
are just taking time out here for a classic half-time treat. Hey!
What a great start from England. It's a terrific goal from Steven Gerrard.
I can only assume a rival car company paid to have a Hyundai ad play over the first England goal of the tournament to make Hyundai look terrible. ITV said that they were wee sorry, and professional baked potato in a suit Adrian Chiles apologised for the interruption in your coverage. Cheers, Adrian. I feel much better now. Let's get into some actual history. 2010 was the first year in over 50 years that North Korea had a presence at the World Cup. Kim Jong-il had decided to let the world see just how good North Korea was at football, and just how well their tactics of fear, torture, and dictatorial management would make them play. The thing is, North Korean citizens are actually banned from leaving the country under any circumstances. So these professional athletes were going to have a very quiet fan base. But if you look at all the footage, there are plenty of passionate North Korean fans. You might have noticed the asterisks there. It was reported that these North Korean fans were actually Chinese actors being paid to support North Korea by government officials to ensure nobody left the country. For legal reasons, I'm required to state that not only is this report speculation, as far as I can tell, but the actual statement from North Korean officials is that the regime had permitted citizens to travel to support their team, and that only some of the fans were Chinese actors. So, there we have it. The fans were not Chinese actors, except for the ones that were. But that's not the only thing North Korea did that made history this World Cup. They had a surprisingly decent showing against five-time winners Brazil, even managing to score against them. Yeah, they lost 2-1, but for a team who hadn't played on a stage like this in 50 years, they did incredibly well against such a strong team. So, the North Korean powers that be decided to broadcast a live football match in North Korea for the first time ever. After all, if they held their own decently against Brazil, surely they could at least draw against someone like Portugal, right? North Korea got hammered. They got obliterated. The first half wasn't too terrible, they were down 1-0, but they could pull it back, right? Nah, mate. Portugal went on to score 6 goals in 45 minutes, resulting in an embarrassing 7-0 loss for the North Korean team. It was one of the most serious beatings in World Cup history. Unless you ask a North Korean. You see, once North Korea were 4-0 down in the 60th minute, the live feed of the game was completely cut. None of the citizens were shown or told that they got beaten so badly. And in fact, the officials doubled down. They told their citizens that Portugal had beaten them by 4-0, but then went on to win the entire thing, which, if you didn't know, they didn't. The idea seemed to be to tell the citizens of North Korea that if they were beaten... The idea seemed to be to tell the citizens of North Korea that they were beaten by the winners, to imply that they didn't get trounced for no reason. You know, if you're going to get beaten so badly, at least it was by the overall best team, right? To this day, nobody in North Korea knows that Spain beat Portugal and went on to win the World Cup that year. Despite a poor showing at the World Cup, North Korea made history on several occasions that year, and that can't be undersold. Also, there's one other thing I want to mention on a slightly lighter note before we move away from North Korean discussions. Ivory Coast player Emmanuel Abui did basically the best thing I've ever seen in any international football game, and just accidentally wandered into a quick briefing between the North Korean coach and one of the players. The coach just completely dismisses him because, well, he can't speak Korean. But that didn't stop Abui. Abui, I know you've had a rough few years, but just remember the smiles you brought to people that day. What a legend. Let me ask you something. How can the most boring and uneventful game of the entire World Cup contain the most interesting and fast-paced 2 minutes of the entire World Cup? Leave it to Spain and Paraguay, I guess. Both teams had been performing well all contest with effortless flair and a certain je ne sais quoi, which is weird as neither of them speak French. Anyway, it came as a surprise that the match was so boring until about an hour in, where someone flipped the batshit switch. Okay, bear with me on this. It started when Paraguay got a penalty in the 57th minute. Spain saved it, and within like 30 seconds, Spain was set on the counter-attack and already in the box. Paraguay took inspiration from Spain's foul and decided to do their own foul and conceded a penalty to Spain. Spain scored the penalty, but the ref was like, do it again, because the guy's mate was super keen to be involved and entered the box before the kick, or as the pros say, did a foul. So Spain went ahead and did it again, but this time the goalie blocks it. But the goalie can't hold it, so another Spaniard is like, don't worry lads, I got this. But then the keeper is like, oh, no you don't. And just straight up grabs the poor fucker's legs to trip him up. Spain tells ref this is una foul, but the ref is like, nah, didn't count as you were. So basically it should have been a penalty every 30 seconds, but somehow this is still a goalless game, and the match goes back to being pretty boring after that, but Spain finally scores a charmingly scrappy goal. One dude shoots it, but it's off the post. The second dude, if you prefer, gets the rebound and hits the post again, but this time for realsies, and that took Spain through to the rest of the tournament. They even made it all the way to the final, which, well, imagine making it to the final of the World Cup, an honour and achievement in itself, representing your country on the biggest stage in international football. Now imagine when you get there, you all, as a team, decide, you know what would be funny? This was one of the dirtiest games in World Cup history, and in fact, more than doubled the record for most yellow cards in a World Cup final. 14 yellow cards were handed out during the entire match, with the Netherlands getting 9 of their 11 players booked. Really doing your country proud, lads. The referee for this match, Howard Webb, went on to say it was the worst 2 hours of his entire life. And this guy works as a policeman in Rotherham, so imagine the shit he's seen. Honestly, given the fact that the Netherlands team decided they just weren't asked about, sportsmanship, I don't think Webb did a terrible job, with one obvious exception. Look at this shit. This motherfucker was kung fu fighting. Are you kidding? Send him off, send him home, send him to jail for GBH. Who tackles somebody's fucking chest in a football game mid-air? And he only got a yellow? Jesus Christ, Webb's kids must get away with murder back home. A lot of the jogging of my memory for this video comes from an old BBC Three documentary piss-take editorial thing hosted by Richard Bacon, counting down the 50 most shocking moments of the entire World Cup. It's an interesting little retrospective. It could do without some of the talking heads being about as funny and interesting as a colonoscopy, but it's still an interesting insight into how impactful the World Cup was, even at the time. This is where I discovered the Argentina versus Mexico incident, which kind of emphasizes why I still struggle to call myself a fan of football. Other than the whole, I find watching a full game to be as fun or interesting as, well, The match was off to a ferocious start, as the opening goal in the match was offside. Oh shit, I've reached a point in the video where I need to explain the offside rule. Okay, bear with me, because this was going to be a dude who only started caring about football like 4 months ago's guide to the offside rule. But in an attempt to make sure that I didn't completely embarrass myself, I requested a little help for this video on my Twitter. and the user @SamOnABirdApp, being the absolute gent that he is, contacted me to correct me on the offside rule. The way that offside works is basically that there have to be 2 players between the goal and the receiver of a pass when it's been passed. The goalkeeper counts as one of these, but he doesn't necessarily have to be one, if that makes any sense. This is presumably for when they're all sort of huddled around the box like penguins, but basically the point is, if you're going to pass to a member of your team, there needs to be at least 2 players between that teammate and the goal the second that the pass is kicked. Thanks, Sam. I look marginally less stupid now. Anyway, so now that you know that, here's a goal that's quite obviously offside. Mexico are fuming at this goal. The referee and his linemen, just referees on the side basically, are starting to think, oh, we might have cocked this. Fans starting to get irate. Remember, this was the days before VAR, so it's not like the ref could just take a sec to look at a video and go, oh yeah, it was my mistake, take the goal away. Unfortunately, someone should have told that to whoever was working in the replay section of the stadium, because the bozo only goes and shows the goal again on the big screen in all its offside glory to an audience of tens of thousands of people. I don't know, maybe the ref had shagged the replay runner's girlfriend or something and he was looking for revenge, but it's a pretty good way to put a target on a man's head. He became public enemy for everyone in that stadium in that moment, except the Argentinian team. At this point in time, FIFA's rules stated explicitly that a referee could not change a verdict based on video footage viewed after the fact. And we got reminded why football is the only sport in the world where hooliganism is its own subculture of the game, as it kicks off between some of the players, the managers, and some of the fans. You can understand the frustration of the players and the fans, but come on, you're representing your country. Getting in a massive scrap sends a bad message. I can only imagine the scenes that security saw that day. Argentina went on to actually earn their victory with 2 more goals, and then went further to face Germany in the quarterfinals. You'll never guess who Germany beat to get to that stage. Or actually, maybe you will, for one major reason. England versus Germany is one of those rivalries that English people perpetuate. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if Germany barely considered us competition. They have the Dutch, who generally put up more of a fight, but you know what jingoism is like. The stage was set to see who'd make it to the quarterfinals after England had scraped through the group stages and reached the knockout games. If you lose a game, you're out. Simple as that. If you drew a game, penalties. Everyone knows England's skill with penalties. So we were all hoping it wouldn't get to that stage, and, well, be careful what you wish for. It was about 40 minutes in. It was 2-1 to Germany with plenty to play for, and Pretty Balls from before had just kicked the ball square into the goal. It bounced off the crossbar, bounced in, and then bounced right back out. But it was in by like a solid foot. It was lucky, perhaps, but a goal is a goal, and it was certainly fair. Unfortunately, the referee, Victor Casani, had apparently completely missed the idea of the ball going into the goal being a goal, and decided not to allow it. I'm not normally one to get annoyed by things like this because, you know, I'm a 24-year-old man. You know, I have other stuff to think about outside of multi-millionaires playing a children's game. But even I was a bit frustrated by this because, quite simply, it wasn't fair. In the same way that I think they should have revoked Argentina's fraudulent goal from before, and how I'm mardy that the USA didn't get that final goal against Slovenia, despite it being a great goal and a beautiful comeback coming from 2-0 down to winning 3-2 if the goal had been allowed.
Oh, it's in! He's offside! No, he's not. It's a free kick for a foul, in fact. The referee, as the ball was played in, blew his whistle.
I think it's only fair that this goal is given. Of course, Germany went on to completely trounce us in the second half anyway, with 2 goals in 3 minutes, so I guess we all just sort of collectively sighed, mumbled about the injustice of it all, remembered we'd likely have lost anyway, and got on with our lives. Besides, a lot of English people were still sore about a certain goal from earlier in the tournament.
It's not easy being green.
Now that we're talking about England's performance, there's one thing that simply has to be talked about this World Cup, and honestly, it's not something I'm looking forward to.
This is Dempsey. Decent try, Green spilled it! The United States are level, and it's a nightmare moment for Rob Green!
Robert Green's spill against the USA was seen worldwide and mocked by everyone, but frankly, I think we need to cut the fella some slack. Should he have saved it? yes, obviously, he's a keeper for Christ's sake, it's his job. But at the same time, the man had literally millions of eyes on him at this point, and no doubt through replays got millions more. If you're not nervous under those conditions, you're dead inside. I'm going to put a minor rant here as well. Another little pet peeve that I don't like about that BBC 3 special I mentioned earlier is a bunch of fucking nobodies that I've never heard of who could only dream of being in a position where they have so many eyes on them while they do their jobs, making out like he was some stupid idiot and dismissively insulting Rob Green. Yeah, nice one, lads. Go back to the depths of unrecognised Brit culture where you belong and maybe consider actually being worth a damn before you belittle somebody for a mistake they've likely been kicking themselves over ever since. It's just unnecessarily mean humour from people who have zero empathy from the situation and zero position to talk about it. I don't think it's smart or funny to just unconstructively mock Green like some of these wet wipes did, and I don't think it's charming when it comes from people whose careers have never reached the heights where you probably would make a mistake of this calibre. More than anything, I just have a massive amount of sympathy for Robert Green. Think of the last time you made a mistake at work. Now imagine if you had 17 million people watching you make that mistake with no place to go and collect your thoughts or bounce back, right? Now imagine if some random Radio 1 extra DJ or comedian were ripping into you as if you were a fucking idiot for letting your nerves get the better of you in a position like that. And now imagine that being your legacy, the one thing that basically everybody will remember you for the rest of your life. Plus, when we take into account this new Jabulani Ball basically being a leather balloon, I don't know, I can't help but feel a bit bad for him. So no, I won't be mocking or insulting him here, even though, yeah, he should have saved it.
For the first time in forever.
Honestly, there's so much to talk about for a historical retrospective of the 2010 World Cup, but alas, there's not a lot that I can talk about being a football dumbass. So I'm just going to hit you with some quickfire first-evers that I don't really have much to actually elaborate on. This was the first time Brazil had ever scored an own goal in the World Cup. Melo headed the ball straight into their goal, but for whatever reason it was credited to Schneider, who kicked a cracker of a long shot. I mean, fair, he deserves credit for that, but the replays don't lie, as we've already seen. Melo decided as a result that the only logical solution was to do his best Isaac Clarke impression and just start stomping on people. Nice one, mate. A historical own goal and a red card in the same match. Bet your mum's proud. It was the first time the USA showed up in a major way.
Can America win tonight? Yes, USA's gonna win 2-1. 2-1.
With many American celebrities coming to cheer him on, including professional Animaniacs character Bill Clinton, who just couldn't keep his thirst for blood to himself for 20 seconds.
All great contests at some point become head games. Athletic contests, elections, wars.
Yes, the 42nd President of the United States there, comparing a game of soccer to a nation-spanning conflict. And yeah, I called it soccer. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. When in America, well, don't go to Bill's house, apparently. It sounds like he'll shoot you in the head if you use a blue shell in Mario Kart. It was the first time the World Cup was hosted in South Africa, meaning people like me, who weren't really asked, wanted to see African teams do well. We love an underdog story, right? And if it weren't for Suarez being a cheating little handballing wannabe keeper fuck, Ghana would have made it to the semi-finals. You may also remember Suarez as the player who straight up bit a player on the pitch mid-game on 3 separate occasions, or perhaps you know him as the player the FA found guilty of racial abuse to another player. In the 2010 World Cup, he was remembered as the player who handballed, pretended to be really upset as he was being sent off, and then celebrated like a hero when he realised that Ghana had missed the penalty. The man's not a footballer. He's a poorly trained dog with zero sportsmanship, and the fact that he's still thought of highly in this sport despite this gets, to say the least, right on my plums. It was the first time we saw New Zealand making an appearance in just under 30 years, and the fellas went on to be the only undefeated team in the entire tournament. They didn't get enough points to go through to the knockout stages, but they tied with the champions Italy and played incredibly well when you consider that one of the players was a full-time banker who did football with his club as a second job, and another didn't have a club that they played for at all. Impressive stuff, guys. Speaking of Italy, it was the first time Italy forgot what the hell football was with one of their worst performances ever, drawing with underdogs New Zealand despite being the champs, losing to Slovakia of all people, and finishing absolute bottom of Group F. In retrospect, a fitting group until we can get a Group F-. But if the former champs were having an absolute nightmare of a World Cup, the former runners-up... Even before the World Cup, France had a terrible World Cup. Their qualifying matches were abysmal, leading to a match where they had to beat Ireland in order to actually make it to the World Cup. The captain and renowned legend of the game, Thierry Henry, handled the ball twice to get France to win the game. Ireland are, to my understanding, still mad about it to this day, and frankly they have every right to be so. The incident went to the head honchos of FIFA, where president of FIFA and goal replay denialist Sepp Blatter said,
"I appeal to all the players and coaches to observe this fair play. In 2010, we want to prove that football is more than just kicking a ball, but has social and cultural value. So we ask the players, please observe fair play, so they will be an example to the rest of the world."
Christ, let's hope nobody showed him that final, eh? But, by fair means or foul, France flew to play football and fucked it. To start, the manager's decisions for who should play were surprising. I mean, as I said, I don't really know, they all look better than anything I could do, but apparently there were some important players that were left off for some random newcomers. Fine in theory, but not when you're already playing like donkeys. After a lukewarm draw, they began getting their asses handed to them on a Mexican platter in their second game, and during the halftime team talk, Nicolas Anelka responded to his coach telling him he should stay in position by saying,
"Va te faire foutre, fils de pute."
Just like the time I tried that when my boss was giving me feedback on my performance at work, he was sent home. I'm still not allowed back in a Holland and Barrett. Once Anelka was sent home, the rest of the players started wondering who leaked the story. French team captain Evra went so far as to say, "The problem of France..." I'm not doing a French accent. "The problem of France is not Anelka, but the traitor among us. We must eliminate the traitor from the group because he wants to hurt the team." Ultimately, the players collectively decided sod this for a lark and went on strike in protest of Anelka being sent home, refusing to train until the manager brought him back.
To mark their opposition to the highest level of French football, all players have decided not to participate in training.
But it gets worse. Of course it gets worse. The captain and the fitness coach have a massive row on the training ground because even when they're training, they ain't happy. The coach even walks off and throws his World Cup badge away in a huff. Like, come on lads, you could have got €50 for that at least. Despite all this bullshit going on, they still had one game left to play. Against the host team no less, South Africa. All they had to do was win this match, and boom, the team makes it through to the knockout stages. The manager, still licking his wounds about all the big meanies in the team, had left everyone who had upset him off the team sheets. Some of their best not even used as reserves on the bench. Great start. Maybe they wanted to show off some of the fresh faces that the squad had to offer. If only the fresh faces had had something to offer. France dismally lost 2-1, with the only solace coming from a frankly mediocre open goal shot. They performed worse than England in the group stages, for fuck's sake. Even Italy weren't as bad. They managed to get 2 points. France walk away with a singular point in the group stages. Bottom of their table, better luck next time. How does a team go from the runners-up to this? It was a sight to behold, and as if they hadn't made themselves look terrible enough already, the salty manager refuses to shake the hand of the other team's manager. Such disrespect. It's not their fault you were a shit manager and your team played like arseholes, fella. Save what little respect you have left and shake the poor lad's hand. You might be wondering what happened to them when they were sent home. Well, first of all, they were all forced to fly economy class with the commoners, which is just really funny. When they got home, Thierry Henry was told to meet with the French Prime Minister to explain the terrible performance that had embarrassed the nation. I mean, holy shit. Imagine if that had been England today and, I don't know, Harry Kane and Gareth Southgate had to go get a bollocking from Boris Johnson.
Great supine protoplasmic invertebrate jellies.
And the final nail in the coffin was that a huge amount of players, particularly the ones who had caused the most trouble, received bans for their outrageous behaviour. Bet FIFA wish they'd had that rematch with Ireland now, eh? Oh, for fuck, I've got to talk about... Okay. While pundits worldwide were pontificating on the different teams' chances of success or failure, one creature was out here making them all look stupid. To be fair though, octopi do have 9 brains. Yeah, this is a weird one. An octopus called Paul was making predictions about who would win World Cup fixtures by being given 2 boxes full of food with flags painted on the front, and whichever box he ate from, apparently, was his prediction. If it sounds silly to you, well, thank you, first of all, because I thought I was going mad here, but as it happens, the little fella did alright. He correctly predicted 12 out of 14 matches, including correctly predicting Spain as the World Cup winner and getting every prediction for the World Cup completely correct. Though saying predicted implies he was doing more than just chowing down on whatever food he noticed and could get to first, but still. It is possible to flip a coin and have it come up as heads 7 times in a row, so whether he got lucky or really had some omniscient knowledge, he gave us all something to talk about at least. And he's still more articulate than some football fans.
Come on, England! Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
In 2010, John Terry was sacked as skipper for a variety of reasons. Earlier that year, it had been revealed that he cheated on his wife with the ex-girlfriend of a teammate behind his back. Allegedly, this would happen while the teammate, Wayne Bridge, was looking after their 4-year-old baby. Nice. Terry also had incidents with insulting American tourists at Heathrow. I mean, tacky and needless at any time, but he did it in September 2001. Yep. The man made fun of Americans in an airport about 9/11 mere days after it happened. Nice. His father had been arrested for dealing cocaine, not his fault necessarily, but the press considered it a sins of the father situation. Basically, it was clear that this man was not cut out to be a role model. And that's fine, few people are. I'm certainly not. But with being the captain of a national football team comes a certain responsibility to be a good role model on and off the pitch. And if you needed any further proof that Terry was not that guy, look no further than the captain's talk. For some baffling reason, I can only assume Steven Gerrard was found tied up in a locker somewhere so John could take his place, John Terry took it upon himself to give the captain's talk at a press conference. And let me tell you, he ended up sounding like a fucking dickhead. In a presumptuous and arrogant speech, Terry had the following to say.
Since I lost the armband, nothing's ever changed for me, whether it be, off the training field, in the camp, in the dressing room before, I'll still be the same. No one will ever take that away from me. I was born to do stuff like that, and, I'll continue to do that in the dressing room, on the training field.
He also said, I'm not going to sit here and question the manager, and then immediately went on to sit there and question the manager.
There's no point keeping it in, whether, we have an argument with the manager or it upsets him, us expressing our opinions. Everyone needs to get off their chest exactly how they're feeling. Honestly,
there is one thing really likeable about this whole masturbatory press conference, and that's the guy sat next to Terry. Look at this guy. He is as sick of this shit as we are. His whole reaction to the bullshit Terry's chatting just gives me life. Right, I got a lamb in the oven and it's nearly done, so let's wrap this up. When their team plays badly, everyone wishes they could have 5 minutes to just say exactly what they want to the players. And this World Cup, we English people finally had a regular guy rep to tell the team how it is. Or was. How does time work? Seriously, my man had the chance to say what everyone was thinking to the overpaid and underperforming England team. Pavlos Joseph was directed to the dressing room after being told by an official that there's a toilet down there, and after following the directions had accidentally wandered into the dressing room after the 0-0 Algeria match. Pavlos, after realising he was surrounded by the team, looked David Beckham straight in the eye and said,
David, we spent a lot of money coming out here. That was a disgrace. And what are you going to do about it?
When challenged by another player from the other side of the room, he said, my name's Pavlos, and I actually just need the toilet. But fuck it, in for a penny, right? Or in to spend a penny in his case. He then went down the bench, just addressing the players, saying that was woeful, not good enough. And it just... It's just such a good concept. After saying his piece, he went for his piss and was subsequently charged with trespassing. Pavlos was made to pay a £65 fine, but honestly, that must have been worth every penny, and I sincerely hope that this legend has never paid for a drink since. Heroic display. The team could have taken some advice about getting past defences from Pavlos. Well, anyway, ladies, gentlemen, and everything in between, that was Africa. The 2010 World Cup was one for the history books, and I hope in this video I've explained why it's had such a big cultural impact, more so than really any other World Cup in my lifetime, before or since. I hope you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane. I hope you enjoyed learning stuff if you never knew about or cared about this World Cup or football as a whole. Hey, no judgment. And I hope you'll consider subscribing to see more videos like this when they come out. I'm a small channel really trying to grow, so all the support, it means a lot right now. You know, a like here, a comment there, it goes a long way and I'd really appreciate it. Check the description for a load of the sources and links to the stuff that I've referenced, and I'll catch you in the next video, whenever that will be. See you then.